Hi, my name is Eileen Flood, under ET Flood. Today is August 2nd, 2015. I am in Dublin, Ireland. The statement I'm about to give is for the benefit of the UN and the UN member states. It is for the benefit of the Irish government, particularly the Department of Justice and the Garde Siochana. It is for the City of Toronto, Mayor Tory, Police Chief, Attorney General. It is for the province of Quebec, same, Police, Ombudsman, Premier, and it is also for the people of the UK. This matter, which started almost 9 years ago, involves literally 4 different governments, potentially 5. And it involves all Christians, it involves all Jews, it involves all Muslims, it involves everybody. The right to privacy is a fundamental right to safety. It is a fundamental right to life. Medallion Properties, Medallion Corporation, formerly Primrose, Economic Insurance, the Jewish Defense League, Kimberly Rankin and Family, PC Demirden and Toronto Police Services. All of the doctors and hospitals involved in this matter in Canada, and both in Toronto and Montreal, here in Ireland, and even in the UK. Data breach is a serious matter, and commencing on September 8, 2006, was the first incident of invading my private information to use it to do violence to me. I have never in my life been charged with a crime. However, since that time, coming on to 9 years ago, not only have I been kept under surveillance in my home, on the phone, and in public, you have made phone calls everywhere, defaming me some kind of EDP clown, some kind of drug addict, some kind of degenerate who's never worked in their life. Your obsession with humiliating me has gotten to the point where you started putting on videos on humiliation sites, not just to a couple of million people, not just to tens of millions of people, but potentially 100 million people. I started working when I was 11 years old. My parents immigrated from Ireland and settled in Toronto. By the time I was 12, I was getting tax deductions. By the time I was 15, I was managing. By the time I was 29, I was working for Colliers International as the only female sales rep and one of the top 10 female sales reps in Canada, doing multi-million-dollar deals. I got 3 degrees. My academic and my work history for the first 30 years is outstanding. In the early 90s, a series of events happened which made me disabled. There was a motor vehicle accident with a bus, a GO Transit bus, ran me off the road in June of 1991. In December of 1991 at St. Michael's Cathedral, a man attacked me in the washroom of a church basement. He got 10 years. My mother suddenly died 6 months after that, in July of 1992. And finally, in September of 1992, having had the courage to get back on my bike, I was once again involved in another accident. Seemingly for 12 years, I was disabled. I seemed to be going just to medical attendances all the time. After that last accident, I received wage indemnification benefits. There was a period of 5 months I didn't claim. So for the first time in my life, I technically committed a crime, and I went forward to the Department of Social Welfare. I went forward to Ms. Brass and said, look, I didn't claim for the last 5 months. She didn't say, we're going to go to the police. She just said it's an overpayment and it's going to have to be settled. In 1996, I settled that accident. Bert Rafel handled it. the City of Toronto was the number one direction to be paid. Since the settlement was for pain and suffering only, they couldn't take the whole amount, which was $5,000. They agreed to take $799. I never again heard from the City of Toronto that I owed them money. But once again, at no point did anybody ever say, we went to the police. You have a record. Or in fact, what's in front of the City of Toronto right now is the issue of what's called carding. A sophisticated form of profiling, whereby you use somebody's private information, you don't actually charge them, but you make, as a make-work project, you make it look like they're some type of criminal. The depression I suffered from and the associative chronic pain, the post-traumatic stress disorder from having so many severe events happen in such a short time. At this point in the game, I'm kind of wondering how much did having a false record shot on a regular basis have to do with me not being able to move ahead in the world, since anybody doing a background check would have seen that. And in fact, I didn't even learn by its existence, as I'd never been charged or arrested in my life, until I got a report on the incident of August 1st, 2008, involving Kimberly Rankin, her sister, PC Demirden, and Toronto Police Services. That was the first time I saw welfare fraud, 1992. The reason why I'm saying this is it would appear that since September 2006, somebody in the medallion camp has become quite enamored, and in fact has become obsessed with keeping me under surveillance and making phone calls to say that I'm a criminal. Nay, in the words of Baroness O'Lone, former police ombudsman for Northern Ireland last year, they have made you a pariah. How does somebody who's never been charged end up as a pariah? I'll tell you why. When defendants as criminal, as medallion properties and economic insurance become addicted to keeping their latest victim under surveillance, when they become addicted to making humiliation films or porn films, they have to try to justify the illegal surveillance. This is where the UN comes in, and this is where every single person on the planet becomes affected by this. In Canada right now, currently, if you are in receipt of either disability or social welfare, if you are receiving, say, opiates from a pain clinic because you weren't treated for 100 pounds of glass smashing through you, they can technically keep you under surveillance and not even tell you. In fact, what they do is what's known as remote monitoring. And this is where the UN, and this is where all the Anons and all the Anonymous, and this is where all the member states of the UN, and where every single person on the planet needs to say to the UN, nobody can put a camera in somebody's bedroom, in somebody's toilet, in somebody's home, and be broadcasting it on the internet. Nobody. Even for a prisoner of war, you cannot put a camera in the prisoner's cell. If I had been charged and was incarcerated, well, then the camera's there. That's part of the price of, paying your debt to society. However, you, Medallion, Jewish Defense League, you have decided to take justice into your own hands because, what? You run Canada? You run Ireland? You run the G8? Israel runs everything? Maybe that is the other issue that needs to become public. Who actually is running Canada? Is it the Canadian taxpayers? Is it a mixture of Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Jews? Or is it just the Jewish Defense League, an FBI classified extremist terrorist organization, 2001? Extremist terrorist meaning not just the Israeli army, meaning Mossad, who, hey, adults, where was NORAD the morning of 9/11? Human trafficking is a very serious matter. I am not your pet dog, Kimberly Rankin and family. I am not your pet dog, Medallion Properties, Economic Insurance, and Jewish Defense League. I am not your pet dog, PC Demirden and Toronto Police Services. I am not your pet dog, Government of Canada, Government of Ireland, and State of Israel. I am the sole beneficial owner of Eileen Teresa Flood. For 7 years, I have had police violence every time I go online. After a claim got filed against Ms. Rankin and against Toronto Police Services in 2010, having not actually ever been charged, not actually understanding that when people harass you, you should be able to get a restraining order against them. This suit was filed in August of 2010. And this is when, as they say, the shit hit the fan. Little did I know that while I was renting from you, Miss Rankin, and paying you $900 a month to look after your 2 cats for 2 months, that you actually had a camera in there, and that you were putting it on the web, and that on August 1st in the early mornings you showed up with your sister, and with PC Demirden, and with some other cop, not only ready to drag me to prison, but to beat the shit out of me, which you effectively did. For 6 months I couldn't walk because you made me pack and move, even though 2 PSW workers had been scheduled the day of August 1st. For clarification, Toronto Police Services and everybody involved, when a business deal, a contract, has to be done on a certain date, such as August 1st, the whole world has made a decision. We've all come to a decision that deals aren't done at 12 a.m. That in terms of a business day, such as August 1st, it begins at 12:01. However, in the business world, you have until 5 p.m. business hours. Or in the event of real estate, of which I will hold a license, you have until 11:59 p.m. to move. After I saw a lawyer, after about 1.5 years of not getting medical treatment, that would be Robert Basunder, in December of 2007, after I inadvertently came under the care of the country's, one of Canada's top medical experts, that would be Dr. Christina Prudis, suddenly many strange incidents started to happen. I went for a commercial. They made me do a fight scene. Workplace health and safety, Actor Canada, Actor National, Actor Local, SAG. All actors' unions know. When an actor goes for an audition for a sex or a fight scene, there has to be a union rep present. Why? So that the actor doesn't get forced to do something or exploited in the manner in which you exploited me. And what did you do? I thought I was going to a paying audition, but no. You and your crazy minds, having disabled, paralyzed, and killed I don't know how many people with crashing 100-pound, unmarked, removable windows, which nobody on the planet has ever even heard of, let alone in a Canadian winter where there's a high rise and where gale forces could get up to 180 miles an hour. You thought that by preventing me from getting medical tests, you would start setting up these little incidents so I could get beat up, so that you could try to mitigate the injuries. Canadian Film Centre, Toronto International Film Centre, I hope you get boycotted. I showed up at the costume fitting. I told the director and the producer I could not do a fight scene. I spent 3 years at the University of Alberta taking fight lessons, because on a set you cannot just fight. It has to be choreographed. At no point did you even tell me you were doing a 3-second spot, in which case you don't even have to fight, you just have to mime for a few seconds. Instead, what you did on the set and at that costume fitting is you forced me to do fight scenes in the hope that I would get even further injured, which I did. And on the set, while there was at least 20 people and a crew, you forced me to do that fight scene over and over again for at least a minute. Luckily, we have the evidence. Then we have our incident with Miss Rankin and PC Demirden, which starts my whole chapter with Toronto Police Service and police violence. That was 7 years ago. After the suit got filed, you started attacking me in public. I flee to Montreal. The nonsense continues in Montreal. A woman who's being blacklisted and human trafficked cannot actually go to a woman's shelter because they will not handle somebody who's being attacked by the police, which brings up the most important question. When the police are involved in doing violence to a person, G8 governments and UN, where is the person supposed to turn to? There is nobody to turn to, which brings up the next bigger question. Crimes against humanity, targeting a particular group such as Christians, and engaging in anti-Christian genocide or rackets involving banks and media and government. Using the magic trident of medical, we'll just change the tests and hope they die. Or we'll also make sure they're homeless, which seems to be an obsession here since you've made me homeless at least 7 times over the last 9 years. Because in Canada, if you're homeless, you don't get medical treatment. That is a fact. Add police brutality, and guess what? The magic trident does an excellent job of driving people to suicide. However, the more serious question here is remote monitoring. Anybody watching here right now, I would urge you, if you are in Ireland and you are a taxpayer, or if you're in Canada, that you call your Minister of Justice, or in Canada, the Minister of the Attorney General, that you call Toronto Police Services, that you call the Garde, Siochana, and you demand that I be given witness protection. I cannot pick up a phone, log on to my computer, or do anything without being harassed. I started working at 11. I have the right to work. I have the right to make as much money as humanly possible. I have the right to have my work seen by millions of people. However, the violence is continuing because we seem to have a confusion over here as to who owns my digital rights. City of Toronto, Province of Ontario, currently I owe you somewhere in the region of $25,000. When I went on CPP at the urging of social workers, it was my idea. I didn't know that that false criminal record was being used against me. So that when the CPP, when the disability was approved, even though I had signed an assignment, for some bizarre reason, Pam Horning at CPP made sure that the funds went into my account so I could be set up for a fraud charge later on, which of course almost happened in June of 2006, when I went back on disability. And they asked me, "Where's your paperwork?" And they found out, and I told them the truth. I signed an assignment. I went to the lawyer at the time and said, "How come they put the money in my account? How come they didn't enact the assignment?" And he just shrugged. He didn't say, "You're going to be set up." And that was the first time in my whole life that I ever heard the word police in association with me, other than the knife assault of 1991 involving Mossad Omar. And what they said to me in June of 2006 is this: we went to the police, but they decided, because you came forward, that we're not going to charge you. So you owe us money. Now, what's very important here, and I need to say, because this information has also been used against me, because of the injuries from the accident and the low back pain, I was on opiates for many years. The pain was real. At no point was I trying to defraud. At no point was I trying to be the scrounger of the year, because why on earth would I start working at 11 or be making 90 grand a year by 28? If indeed I was just a bum, which is exactly all you've been saying. You have your entire community of 8 million convinced that I'm a bum, that I need to be violated, that I need to be persecuted, that I need to be taught a lesson, that I have a debt to society that has to be paid. City of Toronto, Province of Ontario, you are owed something in the region of $25,000, which I intend to pay. In fact, what I intend to pay is every single cent you've ever paid out in disability or in social welfare, because I own my own digital rights. In May of 2011, having been subjected to round-the-clock police violence every time I walked outside my door, once that suit was filed, I put a complaint in with the Office of the Independent Review Director. This would be the complaint board for the Toronto Police Services. And in that I had all the evidence relating to the illegal entry, the illegal search, the illegal move that was done on August 1st, and other incidents, such as the incident involving Mimi Gottfried, who once again on October 9th called the police and made me move at threat of putting me in jail, just so I can get even more injured before the 2 weeks before I was scheduled to have a second surgery. Your police wrote back a letter that my claim was frivolous. You know, the 60 pages of forensic evidence is frivolous. However, as all my fans can see on YouTube, is a videotape of PC Demirden, approximately 3 weeks after this, terrorizing me in public. When I eventually went back to you, Christine Zableski, you said, you'll have to take it up with the Supreme Court. Ms. Zableski, Police Chief, Toronto, I think we need to take this up with the UN International Court. You have been keeping me under remote monitoring on the basis of carding a false record to try to say that I am some kind of threat. When I fled to Ireland, you contacted the Garde Siochana and gave them the same bullshit story. In fact, you just tried it in London again in March. Once again, I am saying for the record, I have never been charged, I've never been arrested. Nobody at any given time had the legal right to keep me under surveillance, and especially in the home. I would ask that anybody who is watching this pick up your phone and do something. Not just for me, but because you're next. This addiction to invasion of privacy is human trafficking. The whole thing is just a racket. I've seen enough episodes of Law and Order to understand the basis of law is privacy. Without privacy, there is no law and order. And according to our good friends here at the Jewish Defense League, there is no law or order anyway. The only law and order that we know is what is known as the law of property and status quo, meaning we own all these buildings, so we own the streets because we pay most of the tax. I think it's time that the tax base be separated between Christians, Gentiles, and Jews. The Canadian government was built on what's known as mandatory religious identification because of this very situation. For hundreds of years, France, Catholic, and England, Protestant, had been at war. War of 1812 is a good example. In 1867, two very, very gifted leaders decided, that would be John A. Macdonald and Wilfrid Laurier, that the only way that you can have a democratic government when you have one party essentially wanting to have a war with another is to have what is known as mandatory religious identification, because it's the only safeguard against what this all is, which is nothing but systematic collusion. There's no longer any transparency. There's no longer any accountability in government because it's all collusion. In fact, the case for the UN is whether or not Israel, whether or not organizations such as the Jewish Defense League didn't just engage in treason, that this whole surveillance, mass crime against humanity, this epic landmark atrocity, is in fact a war crime, which in itself is a crime. No Christian, let alone a Christian woman, should have to be hunted in the streets of either London or in Dublin or in Canada. But as my evidence would show, that's exactly what's happened. Until there's witness protection and whistleblower protection, no Christian, whether they are a billionaire or in benefit, is safe. In fact, nobody is safe. Because this game of surveillance, the surveillance societies, where I'm beginning to wonder if some of you people can't walk by a room without installing some kind of remote monitoring device, so you can sell some information. I'm just wondering how far-reaching this is. I would ask anybody that's watching to do everything you can to help me get a lawyer and to demand that I be given witness protection so that when I'm on the street, I'm not attacked or persecuted by a group of Zionist Jews who think that I'm some kind of degenerate, who have grown up having some kind of crazy story about World War II where it just sort of ends at 6 million in the Holocaust and doesn't actually include up to 120 million people dying. It doesn't actually include up to maybe, 60 million Christians on the Allied side giving their lives to save Jews, where they're led to believe that somehow all Christians or all Catholics are Nazis. Well, then how do you explain Coventry Cathedral? If, Hitler was in bed with the Vatican, most of that war doesn't make any sense. Nobody has the right to wage war against me, anybody who's close to me, or against any Christian or any Muslim or anybody in a GH country. That is a war crime. That is treason. And though you've gotten away with it for close to 15 years, what's running the planet right now is a UN declaration. That is the instrument. What is running each and every country is their own constitution. So whether you're a police officer, whether you're a civilian, your responsibility is to your own constitution. Your responsibility is to respect and adhere to that no matter what it takes. And it would seem to me that things are so out of control that maybe UN member states, such as Russia and China, need to intervene. No point in you trying to point the finger on Syria or somebody else when the worst human rights atrocities are happening in places like Canada. My parents worked both as psychiatric nurses. I watched firsthand as the largest psychiatric facility in Canada, which was formerly known as the Queen Street Mental Hospital. I watched firsthand how you took thousands of people who had been hospitalized for decades, who were genuinely ill, how you took them and put them into rooming houses and sent welfare checks. And you know what? They died because they were never capable of taking care of themselves anyway. And that's how the problem of homelessness started. When I came off opiates, I started to use medicinal marijuana, and it got out of hand to the point where I thought I could walk on water. I didn't understand about the false record being shopped around me. I couldn't understand how I went from being one of the greatest performers and achievers and producers on the planet to spending 12 years as basically a full-time patient. An attempt to try to exonerate myself from my past. And in a state of rage, which happened after I was physically healed, I could understand the level of psychic or emotional pain. I had my records shredded. In fact, I paid ProShred to shred my records. So all my receipts, all the medical pleadings, everything was shredded. Medallion Properties, Medallion Corporation, Economic Insurance, your whole agenda, your entire MO from September 2006 onward is because once the window crashed and you made sure I was denied treatment, you also found out that those records had been destroyed so that you could pretty well say whatever you wanted. And I didn't have anything on hand. But more importantly, you had a camera in my home. How somebody could put a camera in a female civilian's home who's injured, who is so badly injured they can't function, and put that onto a humiliation website like some big fucking joke is beyond me. In fact, I think we need to make all the evidence public so that laws are changed. Because what you have done is so deplorable, is so deviant and depraved, and is clearly such an obsession that nobody would believe it unless they saw it. Once again, I reiterate that I need the UN's protection, and I would certainly ask all Christians in the world, particularly Pope Francis, you need to get down on the ground, sir. Because when Jews start keeping Christian females as trophy slaves, which is what this is all about, human trafficking with a capital H, something has gone terribly wrong. And when they are in fact using police services, big males, to threaten and terrorize their victims so they can get off, which is known as sexual sadism disorder, that is an even more serious problem. I have the right to be doing my music. I don't want to spend another year passive-aggressively talking about this because each time I go online, at a certain point, all kinds of shit starts to happen. Whether it's dressing up dogs or whatever. But I have something very important also to say. And this is for posterity. And this is for all the anons and the anonymous and all the hackers. Or even if I'm lucky, North Korea. I own the digital rights to me. When I die, they retain with me in my estate for 70 years. That will never change. Your regime will be gone soon. And for posterity, I would ask that people always recognize that I own my own self. My face belongs to me. My body belongs to me. My voice belongs to me. I started training at a young age. I worked harder, and so did my parents. And for you people to have made a mockery, just so you could get off, is the kind of thing that makes people and will make people want to go to war, which I don't think is what you want. I would like to thank all the music artists, David Bowie, Muse, etc., who have done videos on this subject matter of girl-on-girl terrorism, on police keeping women as remote monitoring slaves. And what I want to say to the UN and to the people most especially, remote monitoring the home, gold on the ceiling, this has to be abolished now. Because here's the point. The only thing Toronto Police Services or Montreal Police Services or the Jewish Defense League is using remote monitoring for is to murder people. And I'll tell you why. In this whole 9/11 security BS Middle East, experts will soon testify that when a human being walks into a room that has a camera or any kind of remote recording device, the subconscious brain knows. In fact, I was under remote monitoring, is it would appear that video for Pumped Up Kicks. I'm sorry, but there's a photograph in there that looks strangely like my sister's niece's bedroom, where I was staying in early as January 2007. In 2009, when I knew nothing about remote monitoring, when I only learned about this when finally somebody told me in May of 2011 that I was on humiliation sites. At this point, I couldn't understand why I was getting recognized in public. It would appear that every Jewish person on the planet knows who I am. Not under my name, of course, but under EDP Clown or some kind of other shit like that. At one point in 2009, I moved from an apartment, and I moved into a very small apartment. And this was at 219 Fort York Boulevard. And what happened was, as soon as I moved in, I couldn't sleep. I would just wake up every 2 seconds. And by the fourth day, this would have been getting into the third week of August 2009, by the fourth day, I even went back to my old apartment to try to sleep there. I became suicidal. I tried to get hospitalized several times. They wouldn't hospitalize me. And finally, in late September 2009, for the first and only time in my life, I took an overdose in despair. I hadn't slept at that point for about 5 weeks. I called 911. They took me to St. Michael's. I begged to be admitted. I begged for help. 24 hours later, they discharged me. PC Demirden, Toronto Police Services. There was a camera in that apartment. That's why I couldn't sleep. And in fact, at one point when I posted you, the US Navy followed me shortly afterwards. Which brings up the question also, why is the National Security Agency following me? This racket will not be able to go on much longer. So the sooner everybody gets protection via witness protection and whistleblower protection, the better for everybody, including the perpetrators. Because nobody can be happy in this prison. And once again, I reiterate, I have the right to work. Nobody has the right to be on my phone, on my computer. I have the right to a lawyer to exonerate myself and to terminate any assistance, any disability from the Canadian or the Irish government, because clearly you're using that as a premise to keep me under surveillance. You did that from the start. That's how you've been getting away with the windows for so long, which in itself needs to be a subject of UN investigation. City of Toronto, Province of Ontario, Ontario Housing Corporation, Toronto City Housing Corporation, Medallion Properties, and all your associates. And of course the same gig as in Montreal. You have been using unmarked removable windows for decades. We're dealing with like car manufacturers and seatbelts. How could you have let not just me, but so many people die just because you didn't want to pay for window cleaning? Again, I would ask the planet support, that I get a lawyer that the planet can get in touch with if they want to assist in any way. I have the right to do music. I have the right to be the biggest brand on the planet. I've worked my whole life to be successful. I did not choose to become disabled. And Dr. Monica Pearl, in September of 1992, you refused me tests after that last accident. And in fact, Dr. Salo mentioned the reason I ended up having back surgery was because the pain syndrome had gone on too long before even a basic CT scan or MRI was done. And what we've also learned with this accident is even after 100 pounds of glass smashed through me, you still denied me tests. I'm talking the most basic body scan. I'm sorry, on the basis of the evidence, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars have been spent to try to murder me, when it would have only have cost maybe 20 grand to fix me. Once again, I reiterate to the province of Ontario, City of Toronto, I will pay you back every single penny. Same with Canada Pension. And I owe every second of data, whether it's recordings or, it's just so cute. I've noticed for years if I email something or say something, it ends up on a headline. Same words, just a different syntax. What is it? We have to make money off her somehow? Off of this bum? I think the parties involved should start looking after your own business and stay the hell away from me. And most of all, stay the hell away from a certain individual, which is why you're after me. Because as this case shows, it's not just people on benefit, it's billionaires who you're extorting. And there's no protection whatsoever in the G8. What does Vladimir Putin call us? Stronghold? You need to let my friend alone and his family alone. In fact, you need to leave all Christians alone and start looking in the mirrors yourself and stop blacklisting and scapegoating, whether it's me or Dennis O'Brien. The media, all of you, should be charged with treason. And guaranteed immunity, mind you, but you should all be charged or held accountable. Mandatory religious identification, mandatory separation of tax base, privacy laws, witness protection, whistleblower protection, and separation of services. Because if you've all been brought up to be terrorists and think that all Christians are Nazis, then you shouldn't be near us. Because your racism has cost, in this case alone, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. There's no difference between what you've been doing to me and what the Ku Klux Klan did to black people. This has to stop. And this protecting each other, that's collusion. That has to stop. And I know that there's enough Jews out there who are tired of this themselves, who don't want to have anything to do with this Zionist fascism. Because when you start using racist hate in police services to do violence to innocent people, or to partake in a genocide, that is fascism. And maybe that's the problem with being obsessed with Adolf Hitler, or with the Holocaust. People, the whole thing, everybody lost in that war. That's why the UN came up with a declaration to make sure it would never happen again. When I'm on Twitter, I have the right to say what I need to say without you blocking me. Without you saying wherever I go, she's some kind of risk, because now we've done so much violence to her that we have to keep her under surveillance and guard. Guard. As long as I'm watching you, as long as we're watching you, you can't do anything. And isn't it just so convenient that you all have your own intelligence network, your own chat rooms and websites? And if I rent from a Jewish person, it's weird that I always end up being made homeless because you make a phone call. Remember? Jewish Defense League, let me tell you something in terms of your Never Forget campaign. Never forget what? 6 million or 120 million? Extortion is extortion. Hate is hate. And this is a landmark hate crime. And I need the entire planet's benefit and help. Thank you very much.